Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, we are pleased and honored to be joined by Dr. Christy Valentine Theard. She is the president and CEO of Healthy Blue. She serves as the New Orleans East Hospital Board Commissioner, and she's also on the Louisiana State Board of Medical Examiners. She joins us to talk about her journey, but also the work that she's doing to be an agent of change and helping to grow Healthy Blue. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's good to have you. But before we talk about your ascension to CEO of such an incredible, very important healthcare provider in our community, I'm always interested in how people get to where they are. So you grow up in New Orleans for the most part, born and raised there. And then when do you decide, I'm going to become a doctor?
You know, I always wanted to become a doctor.
You did?
Yes, I did. And so...
when did you know?
Well, for as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a physician. And so me and my younger sister, I'm one of 7, so I'm number 6. And we were joking that all of our Barbie dolls had knee problems and needed operations.
So, but you're growing up in New Orleans, you're not really seeing any doctors that look like you.
No.
So when do you know it could be possible?
You know, I would have to say that's my parents. My parents were always very supportive. They tolerated our, you know, how we played outside and with our dolls. I was blessed to have parents that I could say, you know, I'm interested in science. I want to do this. And so they were all in on it.
Were you interested in science early on?
Yes, I was. And so very interested in space. I enjoyed science in school. So I was always interested in science. And the blessing was having parents that, you know, were right there with me when I wanted to try new things or go to different places. They were very supportive.
So with 7 kids, was education, was it something that was just a given? You're going to be educated.
Yeah, education was the priority. And I say, I don't know how they did it, really, because you have 7 children. Right. I can remember, you know, I mean, my mom and dad were both phenomenal people. Everyone just pitched in. Everyone helped each other. No one was a picky eater. You had to
Nobody
eat.
Was a picky.
You didn't have that luxury to be picky. You know, if you were picky, you must not be hungry. So my parents were very down to earth, but both involved in business. But education was important, and it shows when it's a priority. You know, we all had that focus on making sure that we had those opportunities.
And so when you get to high school, and now you're starting to formulate this dream that you had from a little girl playing with Barbies and their knees being replaced and, and all of this stuff.
Yes.
So how does the educational system, how do they respond to your goal and your dream to want to go to medical school? You
know, Ursuline was where really that sparked my interest in science, Ursuline Academy in New Orleans. But then I had the honor of going to Xavier University, and there it was just such a culture where you were there in school, you were going to class. If you wanted to be a doctor, Xavier was grooming their students to become physicians. And so I was blessed to have mentors there and teachers there that, you know, you say, I want to be a doctor. Well, yes, you can do that. And they had the pathway designed for you to get there. So it was a very supportive and nurturing environment on their campus. So when you leave, well, you don't really leave because you go across town or across the river or wherever. You go to Xavier, but surely it gets hard, right? On that journey. It does get hard because as sure as you have that nurturing environment, then you are in a world that may not be that nurturing. And so that's when your support system the network that you do have, that you build in school, becomes important. So you can motivate each other, encourage each other during those difficult times. And then again, just having family that, let you know you can do this. You're not the first person doing this. This has been done before. So it's possible.
Wow. And so when your parents know that certainly you're going to medical school, how do they process it?
It's my mom. She lives with me now. And so it's something where you continue to learn from people who may not have had those same opportunities. But always willing to, and recognizing the importance of asking for help and saying when you need help. And those are things that you take with you throughout life. My parents, I think my entire family has been really supportive through this journey. I'm the only physician in my family. So they all know the work that that's involved with that. And although we have others in healthcare and definitely educators and other people in business, I think that my mom is definitely, she says that she is very happy and proud of the work that we're doing and able to do with Healthy Blue. And I'm sure my dad would be just as much.
Did your dad not live to see you become a doctor?
He did. He did. And I can, you go through medical school and residency, and that's a lot. So I can remember I was like, I think I'm going to work part-time. I'm just going to kind of take it easy. And I remember him saying, I think I see you in the thick of it. And I'm saying, I don't know what you see, but I'm going to be spending half my time on a beach. And he said, no, I don't think so. So I think that even though he wasn't able to see this, he wasn't there, with my medical practice. I know that he obviously had some idea of the journey ahead.
Wow. So were they always telling you that you were smart? Or did you sort of know because you just knew?
My parents, they didn't say that I was smart, but they said, if you do your best is enough. So as long as you're doing your best, whatever that is, and that's enough. And so that's what I would focus in on. If I show up and I did my best, I'm good with that. And whatever that is. And so I think that recognizing that you kind of, you gauge yourself. So it's not that you compare yourself to other people and how you're performing compared to other people. You really just look at, okay, what am I doing? Did I do my best? Because when you did, right? So
were you able to like compartmentalize, is this my best as opposed to Melissa's best or Deborah's best?
I think that it's such a personal question that I wouldn't know if they did, but I would know that if I did everything I could have done to prepare. And whether the decision that I made at that time was the best for the outcome that I achieved. And so just really kind of staying in that mindset where it's almost just staying true to yourself, what you're doing, and not, I think it's important to not compare yourself to others because that can limit you.
Absolutely.
Because their best, if you look at their best and you try to be better than that, then you don't know how far you could have gone.
Ooh, now that's a word. Let's get a break here. But when we come back, we'll have more of our conversation with Dr. Christy Valentine Theard. She is the president and CEO of Healthy Blue. Stay on point. We're back after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. It is our great pleasure to welcome to the OPT Network the CEO of Healthy Blue, Dr. Christy Valentine Theard. And we're talking about her journey, but as she goes through medical school and then comes out and you begin to practice. And so after you get out of med school, and do you go back to New Orleans?
Yes. So I stayed in the New Orleans area. I worked as an emergency room physician and hospitalist, but really missed the connection with, you see someone in the emergency room and you wonder how they did, if they, so having that connection to the families, those were important to me. And so after that, I worked in Buras, Louisiana.
Buras, Louisiana.
Yes. So, and people may remember that's where the eye of Hurricane Katrina went. And so I was in a practice there, just there for a couple of weeks before Hurricane Katrina came through and really blew that practice away. And knowing how resilient we are here in Louisiana, I knew that people were coming back to Louisiana. I knew after that they would need quality health care. And so it was in that November after Katrina that I began my medical practices, Valentine Medical Center.
Wow. What made you stay?
Because
the world was your oyster, right?
Yes. But New Orleans and Louisiana is home. And so knowing that, especially when you see the devastation that occurred and the fact that, we know that we're coming back and we know that people are going to build back. And so I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to contribute. I wanted to be part of the success and rebuilding and rebirth of New Orleans and Louisiana. And so that, again, that was that motivation. And so starting the practices, that's where I was able to do my part and contribute to that rebirth after the storm.
And so being that you've practiced for well over 2 decades now, and then you come into the Healthy Blue model.
Yes.
Where you're not only looking at the business aspect of healthcare, but you understand really all sides now. Because you've been on both sides. So how then do you craft the messaging for people who maybe are not doing the things on a regular, continual basis to promote health and wellness?
I think that it's important to speak to first the person. Make sure that you're meeting them where they are and answering the questions that they have. So sometimes what happens in medicine is you can have an approach, we know best, this is what you should do. Just here, it's not tailored to the individual. And I think that that's what Healthy Blue really brings to the community, is that we listen to the community. And instead of telling the community what it needs, we ask the community, how can we help you? How can we help you? How can we bring you closer to better healthcare for you? And so when you start showing that concern, showing that consideration, that's where trust is built. And that's where they start to trust, okay, well, this is someone who actually cares about me and is asking me what I need and not just dictating health and care. And I think that our members really appreciate that. They appreciate the fact that we are their partners. They appreciate the fact that we aren't making them do anything. But when you have life pulling you in 1,000 different directions, and healthcare is not necessarily at the top of mind, then it's more productive for someone to say, what can I do to help you? And so that it doesn't have to be at top of mind. And you can still do all the wonderful things you're doing in your life. And we're at the same time supporting you, making sure that, hey, remember you need to see your doctor when you're feeling good and when you're feeling ill, because that can slip away from us.
Absolutely. And so talk about the mental health of really just Louisianians and people in the world that we all went through after COVID. And it really took a bigger toll on some more than others.
Yes, I think that COVID definitely highlighted, maybe revealed to some, the need and importance of mental health care, and something that it really has to be a priority. So not just a priority for, we're often caretakers of many, but self-care and making sure that we kind of check in with ourselves, take a moment to take a breath, take a moment to step back from work, to have a walk, to do things you enjoy, and to check in with people that you love and ask them, how are you today? Are you okay? Because when you have, COVID has been so isolating in so many ways, even where people work from home now, they're doing so much from home. And so mental health is a priority. And I think that making sure that if you need help, you ask for help. That's where we've seen opportunity. We've had it where people who, especially if they're caregivers, they're giving care to everyone else. They don't ask for care for themselves. And then once they find themselves in very, very difficult and even at times dark spaces, it's harder to bring them out of that. And so you want to just, sometimes people look like, everything is fine, but just asking that question can go a long way, can start a conversation that can bring someone closer to healthcare.
Do you think, Dr. Theard, that we are doing a better job, especially as May is Mental Health Awareness Month? Do you think we're doing a better job? That, I know Healthy Blue is working to make sure that people are seen and heard. Are we really cracking the ice on mental wellness?
Well, we could definitely do better. We could definitely do more. I think, though, having this conversation is important. And I think that having more conversations are needed. So once you have people that have recognized that there is this isolation, that people are needing more mental health, and they see it more. They see it with their families. They see it with their coworkers. They see when people are struggling. I think that and primary care providers become very important with that. You have patients, members, they'll go to their primary care provider before they may seek help from a specialist or a therapist. And I think changing that dynamic becomes important. There isn't a stigma. Your mental well-being, your mind, that drives everything in your body. It's so important to keep those connected, to keep everything well. And so I think that the more we have those mental health checks when you see your primary care provider, when now we have where primary care is referring more to therapists and mental health specialists, recognizing the value.
And even in the African American community, where it's still very, I think we're making some strides, but I think we really have a long way to go. How do you think we dispel the fact that if you need to see a therapist, that you're not crazy, but that it is just like you would see your primary care doctor?
Yes, I think there are blessings that have occurred because of COVID. And I think that a lot of people have been connected more to their family units. A lot of people have been connected more to doing things and crafting and things, developing new interests that they may not have had. Another blessing that I think is coming from COVID is the fact that more and more are realizing that mental health is a medical priority. So it's not, you're crazy. It is, you may have a diagnosis that needs treatment. And so if you can understand when someone has a cough, when you can understand that someone has allergies, anxiety, depression, those are, you put those in the same, everyone is comfortable with pressure problems, but you need mental health breaks too.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's take a break here, but when we come back, we'll have more right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. We always love to bring you CEOs and people who are making change throughout our state. And that's exactly what we're doing this morning. Our guest is Dr. Christy Valentine Theard. She is the president and CEO of Healthy Blue. And we're just talking about sort of how she got here. And then once you take this position, you got to really roll your sleeves up. And you've got to look at the business side, but you got to look at the side of taking care of Louisianians and their health. And one of the things that you guys put together was the Pink campaign.
Yes.
Tell us about what it is.
Sure. The Pink campaign is the Louisiana Department of Health's, their initiative to make sure that individuals that receive Medicaid currently, that their information, address, all of that's up to date so that they can continue potentially receiving those benefits if they qualify when we start re-verifying individuals. So what that campaign is it, regardless of who your Medicaid insurance provider is, you will get a pink letter in the mail. And the importance is if you don't get the letter in the mail, because that means that you need to go call your insurance company and it's on the back of your card, or even log into Louisiana Department of Health's website so that you can just make sure you have your correct information in hand. And I think it's important, even if you haven't yet received a letter, because the campaign is starting up now. It's good to make sure that you have your correct information, that your insurance has your address, that they're able to contact you and make sure that you're up to date. So during the public health emergency that COVID brought on everyone, we haven't been verifying if people actually qualify for Medicaid. And so
that just sort of stopped with the pandemic.
Yes, it did. It stopped with the pandemic. But now the plan is for that to start back up at some point, potentially this year. And so it's regardless of if that happens or when that happens, because, we're still taking COVID day by day. You just look at the back of your card, make sure that you have your correct address on file with your insurance company, with the state, so that as information becomes available, we can get in touch with you and say, hey, re-verifications have begun. Let's just make sure we get you connected so you can continue receiving the medical care that you and your family deserve.
So in other words, a lot of times you get all this junk mail and you throw it away. And then you get this pink letter and you're like, it's probably junk mail.
Right.
But there's a reason that the letter is pink, I guess, to really alert people.
Absolutely correct. And so these are campaigns that have occurred in other states and have been successful. And so just having something that's bright pink, that maybe before you throw it away, you might halfway pause and take a look at it to make sure that you have that correct information on file. So
Dr. Valentine Theard, with COVID and we're sort of hopefully rounding the corner with COVID, but still very, very, very careful and making sure that people are still getting vaccinated, because we don't know what the next variant, and we're really trying to keep our listeners and viewers up on the variants and how they're changing. How has this changed in your idea healthcare and the way that we move forward, especially for those people who maybe got COVID early on and are still struggling? Yes. So it is important to maintain that connection with your primary health care provider. And so I think that now what we have found is that we have people that are seeking out that care, that they are making those connections, that they are calling, and even if they may be the last to call for themselves, they're making sure their family members get vaccinated. We have seniors that have been very critical in encouraging others to get vaccines because they're the trusted leaders in their family. They may be their trusted church members. And so they've been very instrumental, and they've been the ones to raise their hand first and say, hey, I'm going to sign up and get the vaccine, and encourage others to do so. So COVID is still out there, and it is important to make sure that you are vaccinated, you and your family. And Healthy Blue has done a lot of work with communities. This is our sweet spot, because we go out into communities and we make sure that we're there for them, answering their questions and
providing vaccines with them with the Louisiana Department of Health. So although thankfully we have been seeing increases in vaccines in our communities, we still have others that may have questions. And if you have questions, I would encourage you to not be afraid to ask them. You know, it is a personal decision. And sometimes people don't necessarily want to share if they receive the vaccine or not, but you can discuss that with your doctor and make sure that you know and then are informed and making the best decision for you.
You know, I think that the important part to look at with the deaths that happened after COVID were, you know, they occurred in people that were really vulnerable, who had underlying conditions. And so when we're talking about Healthy Blue and it being a staple in the community, you know, how do we speak to people who do have those issues like diabetes and high blood pressure and heart disease, and, you know, becoming better in taking care of our health and making sure, because especially and I say this just because I'm African American, and I know how our community, you know, high blood pressure is something that we live with, and we don't really even look at necessarily lowering the blood pressure. I mean, I know family members that they just know their pressure is going to run high, and they just get into acceptance.
Yes. And that's unfortunate, and you're correct. And that's where we have opportunity. We've lived with so much for so long that it becomes our normal.
It becomes our normal.
And so I think that as we encourage people to make these connections, this is an opportunity to also recognize that you can feel better. You can, you know, and those, you know, hypertension, that high blood pressure, sugar problems, all those things, they kind of smolder in the background. So if they're not directly in your face, you think you can kind of let them go. But it's one of those conditions where you may not recognize how bad you're feeling until you start feeling good. And if COVID does anything for us, it may bring us back to healthcare. So that we're encouraging people have a COVID conversation, but also have a conversation about wellness. So making sure mammograms occur. You still need colonoscopies. You know, all those things that
prostate screenings.
Exactly. Those are all still there. So everything, you know, when COVID was out as in full force, and it's still there, everything was COVID until proven otherwise. You know?
Right.
It's like you had COVID. If you coughed, you had COVID. You know, but we still have other things that are out there that we have to pay attention to.
Right. And those things made people with those vulnerabilities either very, very sick. And so I think that, you know, going forward, if we're going to grow as a community and a healthy community, we've got to get back to some of the basics.
Yes.
Who knew a pandemic would come? And
no one. And I think that you're absolutely right. It's a vulnerability.
Right.
We, you know, have family member, friends, loved ones who live with this, and they don't recognize that actually can make your immune system not as responsive as the person next to you. So you are vulnerable with that. And we want to make sure that, you know, you're eating healthier. You're making those wise choices. You're taking your medication the way that it's prescribed. You know, how I know that that's something that it takes encouragement at times, especially if you have to take medicine more than once a day. So you're spot on. I think that we have other illnesses that our community specifically should recognize as, okay, if I have this under control, or if I'm better managing myself and my health care, that will help me actually fight COVID also.
What other things do our bodies have to fight? And it wasn't until our family experienced catastrophic loss of a loved one that we realized that and it wasn't COVID related, but that these underlying conditions like diabetes and not knowing your numbers can affect you in a health event.
Yes. Yes.
You know?
And it's, you know, and when you said that, it really resonated, you know, because these illnesses, when you have a loved one that has something that they may have experienced and lived with for forever.
Years.
Exactly. And it's a catastrophic event for the individual, but also the family.
Right.
And so that's when you encourage your loved ones
Mm-hmm.
to not only get vaccinated, because we need people vaccinated, but really putting that wellness, that physical health, that mental health
Mm-hmm.
to the forefront.
Right. And what I love about Healthy Blue, Dr. Valentine Theard, is that you guys are in the center, right out front, really encouraging people to get these health checks, to know your numbers, to know what's normal so that you know what's not normal.
Yes, definitely. And I think what has been very helpful for Healthy Blue is just showing up where people are.
Right.
So we're at festivals,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we're at events, we're at the places people want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then so you can have fun, but know that it's also a good thing to take care of yourself and just, hey, here's some information for you and your family.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have questions, you can give us a call. And that's for our current Healthy Blue members, our potential Healthy Blue members, anyone in the community, frankly, that comes up and want information. We're here to share that.
Mm-hmm. And talk about, you know, going forward, you know, some of the services that people really sort of forget about that are really important, that Healthy Blue provides, but you don't really just think about it or talk about it a lot.
Sure. So I think what people possibly miss more frequently than not is that you have to go to the doctor when you are feeling well also. We think of it as, I don't feel good, I need an appointment. And so, frankly, people can go an entire year without ever engaging with their medical professional that cares for them and their families. But even when you're feeling well, it's important to go to the doctor. If you are a diabetic, you should have eye exams. You know, they have kidney tests that they could do to make sure your kidneys are functioning well. You should have foot examinations. So there are things that you have to do to maintain wellness. And again, you know, prostate screenings are important for our community. Colorectal screenings are important for our community. Mammograms and early detection. So unfortunately, COVID pushed a lot of that off. And so we have some people who may not have come back to healthcare in the past 2 years, just picking up where they left off. And it's never too late. And so that's where Healthy Blue is that trusted partner, where wherever you are, no worries, we can bring you right back into the fold to connect you to quality healthcare.
Absolutely. And what we're seeing more and more in almost every community USA is we're seeing dialysis centers. They're popping up on almost in every neighborhood. I would even go as far as say on many street corners, you're seeing these big, beautiful buildings, but there's nothing beautiful about being in a place where you have to be on dialysis. And we're talking about most people that are facing kidney failure. They are people of color.
Yes. And so, you know, what you mentioned earlier about the pressure problems, a way to really hold off on progression to needing dialysis, to having that kidney failure, is keeping your blood pressure and your blood sugar in normal ranges. Because it's those kind of injuries that come to our bodies, and not just the kidneys, the heart, the brain. You see, you know, heart attacks, strokes. Those are things that could come when we have these chronic conditions that we allow to go unchecked. But if there is any motivation, it can be knowing that you are preventing the need and progression to requiring dialysis. And of course, we're thankful for having those services, dialysis services, when necessary. But you're right, no one chooses that.
No.
And if you could choose anything, it is choosing to take your medication as prescribed, give your doctor a call. Make sure you're getting a physical.
Right.
Make sure your children's vaccines are up to date. All of them. I mean, we have many. COVID isn't our only vaccine.
Right,
You know,
right.
It's the one that we talk about, but
The most
Yeah.
right now. But
exactly. So we have children, unfortunately, that we are seeing that are behind on immunizations because they weren't going to the doctor during COVID and during the pandemic when it was really at its height.
so with all you've seen over these many years caring for patients, and I just talk about, dialysis as one, breast cancer, especially among women of color and in central Louisiana, Black women are dying at a rate higher than any other ethnic group. Is there hope for chronic kidney disease? Is there hope?
Absolutely. There is absolutely hope because anything can be cured. So anything, and this is what I think is important for people to know. Anything can be cured. There were times when strep throat was deadly.
Mm-hmm.
But the more that we learn in medicine and the more that we grow in our knowledge, then the better we are at caring for family, for caring for patients, for caring for each other.
Mm-hmm.
So there is absolutely hope. And I think that's why it's important to make that connection.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's important for people of color to participate with their medical care, to really also bring in others.
Mm-hmm.
So as you go, make sure you're asking your friends, have they gone? Because, I've heard too many times when people say they don't want to know.
Right.
They don't get the mammogram. They don't want to know because they don't want to have cancer. And
sometimes you think if you don't know, maybe it won't be there.
Yes, that is so.
Right.
Those are very, very true words because that's what people feel. And I think that if we recognize that the sooner you find out, the more likely you are to race to that cure.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to recognize that. And knowing doesn't mean you don't have it. It means that you just don't know that you do. And so you're unable to treat it. But there is hope if you do have a diagnosis of cancer, wherever it may be. There is hope if you have diabetes. There is hope if you have high blood pressure. There is hope if you have kidney failure. 100% there is hope. And that's why, I'm grateful for the work that we do because it connects people to the fact that there is hope.
Powerful. What a great way to end. There is hope. And hope is making sure that you're connected with a provider that cares about you and your family. And that's Healthy Blue. You can go to their website at www.myhealthybluela.com. Our guest this morning, Dr. Christy Valentine Theard. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Indeed. Hey, everybody, stay on point. We're back after this.